The most popular time to visit the Grand Canyon is probably not the time I'd recommend for most people. That sounds backwards until you realize something important. The Grand Canyon does not have one experience. It has four completely different versions of itself depending on when you show up. In January, you might stand at an overlook and feel like you have the canyon almost entirely to yourself. In July, you might spend more time looking for parking than looking at the view. Same place, completely different experience. So, when is the best time to visit Grand Canyon National Park? The honest answer is there is no bad time to visit. There are only better times depending on what you want to do, how you want to feel, and how much weather you are willing to work with. Before we break down the seasons, there's one key thing to understand here. The Grand Canyon has two very different experiences built into it. The South Rim is where about 90% of visitors go, and it stays open year round. The North Rim sits about 1,000 feet higher, gets much more snow, and is only open roughly mid-May through mid-October. Most people never experience both in the same trip, which is why timing matters more than people realize. Let's start with spring at the South Rim. This is where the Grand Canyon quietly shows off. March through May is one of the most underrated times to visit. Temperatures climb from the 50s into the 70s, the crowds are lighter than summer, and the canyon feels like it is waking up after the winter. If your goal is hiking below the rim, mule rides, long rim walks, or photography without extreme heat, spring delivers. This is also where one of the biggest Grand Canyon surprises shows up. The rim can still have snow in early spring, while the inner canyon already feels warm. One of my favorite experiences there was a mule ride down to Phantom Ranch in April. We started at the rim, bundled up with jackets, felt it snowing on the way down, and within a few hours, we were peeling layers as the temperature climbed. That's not an exaggeration. I think I went from 3 layers down to one. You can be standing in winter conditions and then drop into something that feels like summer in a single descent. That temperature swing is one of the most misunderstood parts of the park. The rim sits around 7,000 feet. The river at the bottom of the canyon sits thousands of feet lower. The canyon creates its own weather zones, which means your clothing strategy can be wrong in two completely different directions on the same day. If you're a hiker, spring is one of the best decisions you can make. If you're a photographer, the rim trail viewpoints on the south rim, like Mather Point at sunrise and Yavapai Observation Station, offer some of the clearest spring visibility without the haze and heat of summer. Now let's talk about summer, which gets all the attention and is not the season I would personally pick first for most travelers. Summer is popular for obvious reasons. School is out, families are traveling, and the park is fully operational. South rim temperatures are often fairly comfortable with highs in the 80s. That seems to surprise people because they expect desert level heat everywhere. Well, while the South Rim feels manageable, Phantom Ranch in the Inner Canyon can exceed 100 degrees regularly. That is where the canyon stops being a sightseeing destination and becomes an environment you need to respect. If you're planning anything below the rim in summer, early starts are not optional, they are essential. Pockets of summer are more crowded than others. I visited in late June, right before the 4th of July rush. I chose weekdays and being active in the mornings and the evenings. On that Thursday evening, I walked part of the rim trail and it felt active without feeling overwhelming. The next morning, I started down South Kaibab Trail around 8:30 a.m. and the experience was beautiful, not chaotic. And the desert view area later that evening felt open during my sunset walk. Just be mindful. If you visit in summer expecting quiet solitude, you will be disappointed. If you're looking for long daylight hours, full access to all activities, and structured early mornings, summer works well. Weather-wise, July through August is monsoon season. Mornings are often clear, then afternoon storms roll in quickly. Lightning becomes a very serious factor since there's little cover along the rim. The trade-off is that those storms can create some of the most dramatic skies you will ever see over the canyon. If your goal is photography with intensity and movement in the sky, summer suddenly becomes very interesting. Now, before we go into fall and winter, let me hit on something that most people never consider. There is an entirely different version of the Grand Canyon most visitors never see, the North Rim. And it's not just a quieter version of the South Rim, it feels like a different national park. It sits higher in elevation, stays way cooler in summer, and receives a fraction of the visitors. And the North Rim is only open mid May through mid October because snow makes the road impassable in winter. Fewer people, denser forest, and viewpoints where you can stand still without hearing hundreds of voices behind you. If your goal is avoiding people entirely, this is your move. The trade off is timing, as in, you don't get flexibility year round. If you're heading to the North Rim, you only have about 5 months of the year to do it. Now let's move into fall at the Grand Canyon, which is where everything starts to line up. September through October is the sweet spot for most first-time visitors. Temperatures drop into the 60s and 70s, hiking conditions improve, and crowds begin to thin after summer. This is where the canyon feels the most balanced. Sunrise and sunset also matter more in the fall than most people realize. The lower sun angle creates deeper shadows and richer color in the rock layers. Mather Point at sunrise, Yavapai Observation Station during the day, and Desert View at sunset all feel more dramatic in the fall because the lighting is softer and the air is clearer. If I were picking one time to visit the Grand Canyon, this is the window I would choose without hesitation. Now let's talk about winter, which is when the canyon becomes almost unrecognizable. Winter at the South Rim is one of the biggest I had no idea moments for most visitors. The park stays open year round, yet the experience shifts completely. Snow settles into the canyon layers, creating a contrast most people never associate with Arizona. You can stand at an overlook and see red rock cliffs dusted in white, stretching for miles into silence. This is also where the crowd shift becomes almost unreal. In summer, you might circle parking lots and wait for viewpoints. In winter, you can walk up to iconic overlooks and find space without effort. You can often stand at major viewpoints and feel like you're sharing them with only a handful of people. The consequence here is obvious. You trade warmth for solitude. You trade easy conditions for something quieter, colder, and far more surreal. If your goal is photography, solitude, or seeing the canyon in a completely different emotional state, winter is one of the most powerful seasons in the entire park. Long story short, here's how I would break it down based on who you are. If you're traveling with kids and want full access and easy logistics, summer works. If you're a serious hiker who wants the best conditions below the rim, spring or fall is your best bet. If your goal is avoiding people entirely, winter or the North Rim is your answer. If your goal is photography, fall and winter give you the most dramatic light and conditions. If you're looking for the best overall experience with weather, crowds, and access all balanced together, September or October wins almost every time. Remember, there's no wrong time to visit the Grand Canyon. There's only the version of the canyon you are choosing to meet. If you've visited Grand Canyon National Park before, leave a comment below when you went and what your favorite part was. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe because we still have more Grand Canyon content coming, including the next episode dedicated to rim hiking, which is a completely different level of adventure logistics and preparation. I'll see you next time on The Great Escape.